Here's how to tie the Lighterman's hitch. Start by wrapping the rope around the support 2 times. You'll need to leave the end pretty long because you'll need to wrap around the support many times. Now take the end of the rope, pass it underneath the standing end, and then do another turn on the top. As you tie it, make sure to adjust these strands so that they're sitting next to one another. After that, take the rope end and go around the support and do another turn around the top. Then again, go around the support and do another turn. And finally, to secure it, take the end of the rope and go around the support and tuck it underneath itself to create a half hitch, and then tie another identical half hitch right underneath it to secure it with 2 half hitches. This is known to be one of the strongest hitches out there because the force is evenly distributed along the whole knot. It's easier to tie than the tensionless hitch, so use it anytime you have access to the free end of the post, like I have right now. Another benefit is that it doesn't jam and you can untie it very easily. Here's how to tie the double overhand stopper knot. Form a loop at the end of the rope, then take the end and go through another time and tighten the knot. On the finished knot, the rope should be parallel on one side and form an X on the other. But if you'll be tying it after a figure 8 follow through or other knots, there's another technique that works better. Put your thumb on the rope and go over it with the end of the rope. Now go over it once again, but this time form an X. And lastly, take out your thumb and put the end of the rope through the loops that you just made. This knot is considered to be one of the best stopper knots because it's strong, it's easy to tie and check, and it's somewhat easy to untie as well. It's most commonly used for securing other knots like the figure 8 follow through and the figure 8 bend. But you can also use this knot to connect 2 ropes together by making 2 of these knots in the opposite directions. In this variation, it's called the double fisherman knot. Here's how to tie the bowline knot. It's one of the most popular and useful knots to know because it creates a secure, fixed loop near the end of the rope. Start by creating a small loop near the end of the rope. Now take the end of the rope and go through it from the back side. Now go around the standing end and back through the loop to finish the knot. Make sure to tighten it very well and to keep the end rather long to account for slippage. The bowline is super useful to know because it's very easy to remember, it's secure, and it doesn't jam when loaded with heavy weight. You can use it for attaching a rope to a fixed object, to create a grab handle, or in a wide variety of other applications. Here's how to tie the Halyard hitch, other called the Halyard shackle knot or the sunfish halyard knot. The first version of this knot is where the tag end sits right next to the halyard, and the second version is actually identical to the poacher's knot, where the tag end exits in the opposite direction. Both of them are equally as strong, so it doesn't really matter which one you choose. And by the way, I do know that this isn't a halyard, I'm just using it as an example. To tie the first version, go through the halyard, then go around the standing end 1-2 times, and finally pass the tag end through this loop over here, and then tighten the knot. And this is how it should look in the end. And to tie the second version, again go through the halyard, and then tie it around the standing end 1-2 full turns. And after that, go through both of these loops that you just made. Through one and through the second one. And again, tighten the knot. And again, this is how it should look like in the end. In theory, the poacher's knot version should be more reliable because the tag end goes through 2 strands over here instead of just 1. But in reality, both of them are equally as strong. Here's how to tie the Stevedore stopper knot. It forms a pretty big knot at the end of the rope, which you can use to keep the rope from slipping through rings, anchors, and other knots. Start by creating a loop near the end of the rope. Then go around it once, a second time, and finally go through this loop. Tighten by pulling the rope in the opposite directions and then pulling the rope while holding the knot with your other free hand. The finished knot should look something like this. Make sure to keep the end pretty long to account for slippage, because as you pull the rope, the end will become a bit shorter. Due to its large profile, this knot is very commonly used in boating, in sailing, and for hauling very heavy loads. You can also use this knot when creating a swing by drilling a hole inside the plank and then tying it in the rope to keep it from slipping through the hole. Here's how to tie the Alpine butterfly bend. Take the end of the first rope and wrap it around your left hand once and place the end between your two fingers like this. Now take the end of the second rope, place it next to the first one and wrap it around once again like this so that both ends cross over here. Finally, take the ends of both ropes with your other hand, place them over and underneath the two bottom strands to finish the knot. Use it anytime you need to connect two ropes. It's very secure and super easy to learn, which is why it's a really useful knot to know. You can even use it for critical situations like climbing, but remember to keep the tag ends pretty long to account for slippage while the knot settles in. Here's how to tie the heaving line knot. Start by creating an S shape near the end of the rope with the rope end sitting on the right side and left pretty long. Now take the rope end and go through this top loop, then go around these two strands, and then go around all three strands. Continue by doing multiple turns around all three strands and make sure to do them tightly and place them neatly next to one another. When you reach the desired length, simply pass the end of the rope through this bottom loop like this. Now you need to tighten this bottom loop, and you do that by pulling this top loop until the bottom one disappears. And finally, you can tighten this loop by pulling on the standing end. This knot is very useful to know if you need to throw one end of the rope around a tree branch or something similar, because it adds a lot of weight to the end of the rope. Here's how to tie the Zeppelin bend knot. Start by creating a bight at the end of each rope and create two loops. The first one should be facing downwards and the other one should be facing upwards. Now take the one that's facing upwards and place it over the one that's facing downwards. Take the end of the first rope and go through the place where both of them intersect. Now take the end of the other rope and do the same thing, just from the other end. To tighten this knot, pull on each of these ropes individually from all directions until the knot feels very tight. You can use this knot whenever you need to connect two ropes together because it's very strong and it's also very easy to untie. It's often used by climbers, mountaineers, arborists, and in similar applications. Here's how to tie the anchor hitch. Start by taking the end of the rope and going 2 times around the object. Now take the end and go over and underneath both of these loops and tighten it as much as you can before proceeding next. Then take the end and again go around the standing end, and this time tuck it underneath itself over here, creating another half hitch. It's essentially a very strong hitch that is very unlikely to untie even with heavy or intermittent loads. It's actually very similar to the round turn and 2 half hitches knot, except here the first half hitch goes underneath both of these loops, making it more reliable and stronger. Use it anytime you need to attach something heavy to a pipe, a pole, or something similar. Here's how to tie the rolling hitch. Take the end of the rope and go around the subject. Then cross the standing end and then do another full turn around it like this. Then go around the free end like this and finally tuck it underneath itself over here and then tighten it before using it. In the end, it should look something like this, and it should be pulled in the direction opposite to the working end. If you pull it perpendicular to the object or in the other direction, then the knot isn't as strong. It's only meant to be pulled in this direction. It's usually used in construction for lifting up heavy tools, scaffolding pipes, and timber. In this case, another half hitch is tied around the other end of the object so that when it's hanging perfectly vertical. Here's how to tie a figure-8 bend. This knot is also sometimes referred to as the Flemish bend, the rewoven figure-8 bend, or the double figure-8 bend. To tie this knot, do a figure-8 knot near the end of the first rope. You do this by taking the end of the rope, going under, up, under, and through the final opening. Now take the end of the second rope and retrace the figure-8 that you just made, just in the other direction. To check that it's tied correctly, make sure that it forms 3 sets of parallel ropes on each side. You can use this knot whenever you need to create a strong connection between 2 ropes because it's one of the strongest knots out there. This knot tightens as you pull it, so it doesn't require any stopper knots. But when used in critical applications like climbing, a lot of people like to add double overhand stopper knots on each side. Here's how to tie the Ashley stopper knot, sometimes also referred to as the Oysterman's knot. Start by creating a medium-sized bight near the end of the rope. Then fold it down like this and make the left loop slightly larger than the other one. Now pass the larger loop through the smaller one and tighten this knot. After that, take the end of the rope and go through this loop and tighten it by pulling on the standing end. To check that it's tied correctly, turn it slightly and you should see 3 lobes that are similar in size. This stopper knot is so good because it's very bulky, it's very strong, and it's also very easy to untie. To find other useful knots, subscribe and check out our channel. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.